Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Today we have a special guest, Todd Tucker, Senior Vice President of Flash and Ride Mobility. Todd is a parking and transportation leader, especially beginning in the transportation and parking space since the late 90s. He has a doctorate in business administration and focusing in innovation, as well as an MBA from the Michigan University. Todd, as an addition to that, you're also a veteran. You serve in the United States Marine Army, huh?
I did, yeah. I appreciate that introduction. Yeah, met many years ago. I'm ashamed to admit what year I served, but yeah, it's been a while.
Wow, that's amazing, Todd. So most important, thank you for joining the podcast tonight. Really appreciate it. So Todd, tell us a little bit, and for all the audience, how did you guys start in the parking and transportation space?
No, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me, Daniel. I really impressed with this podcast and also DPV. What a great website you guys have, and great information. So really enjoying getting to know you. I started in this business like a lot of folks back in the 90s by accident. I was looking for a good job, had a little bit had moved out of the state, was down in Florida, in Miami, which oddly enough is where I live now, after many years of moving around the country in the parking industry. And I found a job running a parking garage as a parking operator for a company that many of your viewers may remember called Central Parking System, which doesn't exist anymore. It's part of SP Plus. And so a simple parking garage job that I intended to have for a short period of time. The industry was very kind to me. The company was very kind to me. The community and just like this here now, it's great community. And so I stayed, and I just kept building my career. I moved around the country, changed jobs just a couple times to different competing operators over the years, but did about 20 years as a parking operator, from everywhere from all of Florida to the Ohios, Michigan, Chicago, San Francisco, and the whole West Coast, and had a really great time. I got to do everything from shuttle operations to airports to parking garages to, I did sales, business development, and operations. I was general counsel. I got to do a little bit of everything and every type of job you can imagine, and I got to do a bunch of different jobs along the way. So from a life experience and a career experience standpoint, the parking industry and the transportation industry has been very, very good to me. And last thing I'll say is that it's just really exciting to be here now as your firm is very technological forward, and I'm impressed to see what you guys are doing, but to sit at kind of the crux of this next generation of technology and being able to look back over your shoulder and say, I can see all of what we did 20 years ago. But what's really exciting is
Totally. Very well said, Todd. So I appreciate your thoughts and comments. So bring us back to 20 years ago when you first started, Todd. How was it versus how it is today?
Wow. Boy, I love talking about this. I think I'm officially one of those old men that loves to tell old war stories. I would say that the business was so much less personal. It was so less customer-centric, very transactional. It was cars come in, cars come out. You don't know who's inside the car. You don't care. They're a ticket number. They're a car. People get on shuttles. They get off shuttles. They're just people. I think what's really interesting to see is, and we're all in the post Uber and Lyft and Grubhub era, where there's this real personal connection with customers now that's almost mandatory for a business to be successful and to really create a strong brand. And so that's really interesting to look back and see that kind of renaissance that went on in this business that took a long time to get here. It was way overdue for our industry. And I think firms like yours and mine, candidly, that focus on that are doing a much better job in creating value for their clients and customers. A lot of people, surprisingly, like a lot of industries, there's still a lot of laggards out there that haven't really realized that yet.
Totally. Very well said. So now moving forward, help us understand more about your role at Flash and Arrive Mobility. What is it that you do, and what is Flash and Arrive Mobility specializes on?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I started, about 8 years ago, I left the actual operations space and got into the technology side. Was lucky enough to get a job with a company called ParkWiz, which was a parking reservation app, very little small app company that was based in Chicago. Over the last 8 years, we were successful in growing that. We actually changed the name to Arrive Mobility after we added a bunch of products and grew to a sufficient size. We actually took an investment from Amazon. Amazon had put some dollars into us and had suggested that we make the name a little bigger. And it encompassed more of that platform approach you and I were talking about earlier, creating a platform upon which a lot of different interesting things can happen within the transportation, parking, mobility space, not just simple parking reservations. So we really doubled down on that, made a lot of investments, brought some great people in with some real smart business chops from other spaces. And then a couple of years ago, right after COVID, or actually during COVID, technically, we actually merged with a company called Flash. Very similar company in the culture and the way they thought about the business, but very different in their applications. We at the time had grown into, again, this digital platform. Any type of way that you can digitize a parking or transportation or mobility transaction, we really have something for that. Flash was a hardware company. They were primarily selling the gates and the readers and the access control equipment, LPR cameras, physical hardware that went into a parking garage. We needed help getting into garages when we needed their technology, and they wanted to have a platform like we had. So they were actually considering building a platform and decided that they would find better results in ROI in merging with us. So take our platform and their hardware stack, and we've kind of become this one-stop shop for anything that a parking, transportation, mobility system might need. Everything from LPR cameras to EV chargers to digital products like apps. We have digital products that live inside the head units of automobiles, where people driving their Volvo now use our technology in the head unit of their Volvo vehicle to find a parking space. Really cool stuff like that. I could go on and on about it.
Yeah, so break it down for us, or dumb it down for us. Like, what are your top 3 solutions that you guys are mostly proud of, that gets you the most excited, pretty much?
Yeah, I would say 3 things. One big strategy we have right now that I think you guys will appreciate, I think anybody that's interested in sustainability, is combining parking transactions with charging stations. So there's a lot of talk about EV charging out there, but there's not much talk about how do you make it easier for people to access those chargers? How do you maintain those chargers, make sure those chargers are working and have proper uptime? So there's a lot of chargers being installed out there. They don't work that great. Half the time they're broken. And if I pull up, do I have to download an app, or do I have the right adapter? Like, solving that final, couple inches of connectivity is something we're spending a lot of time on. We have our own chargers. We have our own charging network. We have reservations. You can reserve, days in advance to go get a charger and that specific charger. So I think we're in a really interesting time with EV charging and sustainability. It's a big, important part of our company. And trying to, like a lot of things, big ideas usually have to kind of be brought in for a landing, and there's a lot of little details that you have to get right to bring for a landing. So we're trying to solve those details. That's one.
Actually, I thought, sorry to interrupt you. So with the EV chargers, walk us through sort of the innovation behind it. So if I go into a parking lot, are those units trademarked by your company specifically, and how does it work? So if I'm driving, an electrical vehicle, how much normally am I paying? Do I have to have a membership? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a lot of this is evolving as we go, and we're kind of creating the marketplace a little bit. And to be fair to your listeners, there are much smarter people. I've been learning a lot about EV in the last couple of years, but there are much smarter people at our firm that can walk through in a much more granular detail, down to talking about the grid and power and kilowatts per hour and all that.
Yeah.
Not the guy for that. But the larger strategy is creating, think about, one is the charger on site. So we white label, essentially work with a third party and build our own units. They're the level 2 chargers primarily. We've probably got a couple thousand out there. We're trying to expand and meet the needs. We know that, New York City, for example, has like less than 1,000 chargers, and they need to have something like 70,000 in the next 7 years. So there's a big need in those types of markets. So having the charger and the physical infrastructure and getting that in place is just one piece of the pie. The real hard piece is the interoperability. And so, the innovations we're proud of are garages, for example, where we might have a row of chargers inside where people can download an app or not download an app, access the garage, pull a ticket, and start a digital transaction. And with that same transaction that they're using to pay to park in the garage, they're also paying for the charger, and they're unlocking the charger and putting that all into one transaction for kind of a seamless experience. The automakers love this. The fleets love this. This is one reason we're really excited about it. Big fleets. I mean, you've got fleets like Uber, Lyft, Hertz, Amazon. These people love this type of a system because that solves a major part of the functionality, the operationalization of them trying to find ways to charge their coming electric fleets.
Yeah.
And then of course automakers love it too, because this seems to be where, as our CEO often says, the automakers have burned the boats. They're not going back to carbon,
I love it. Yep.
some sort of a path in the next 8 or 10 years where 75 or 85% of their production is EV. So we burned our boats too, and we're trying to make sure that we have power and infrastructure that's as easy as possible for all those cars are going to be coming to be able to find a charger, and then at the same time make it really easy for the consumer to be able to access that charger. They're really two pieces of the puzzle that have got to link up. This whole thing doesn't.
Got it. So Todd, question. I guess it all boils down at the end of the day of having that parking contract with that specific facility in order to enable this electrical charges. Because I'm assuming again, and excuse my lack of knowledge in the parking sector, but if you don't have that specific contract for that parking facility, how can you provide the electrical vehicle chargers, right?
It's a great point. We're definitely, to be clear to you and your viewers, we have no aspirations of being parking operators or getting into that business or disintermediating or displacing. We're a technology partner 100%. So if a parking operator doesn't own the lot, but they want access or they're representing their asset owner or they want to get chargers, we can still utilize their existing infrastructure to help them with that. If it's an asset owner that owns his own parking lot and he wants to work with us, they can buy chargers from us. They can lease chargers from us. We can create a revenue share program where they're making money off the charges through our system. We're really flexible, as most in this. To be fair to other firms in the space, everybody's having to be flexible to meet all these different use cases. Because you're right, some garages are privately owned, some are owned by the city, some parking spaces are on street, some are off street. Some have to go past a barrier and a gate to get to it. Others are on a big surface lot. There's so many different use cases that in order to electrify the world, we got to do it. We have to sort of do it.
That is awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Todd. So what are the most common challenges that you currently experience in your sector?
Yeah, I think, and I didn't, if I gave your viewers the impression all we're doing is EV, I didn't mean to. It's definitely probably the hottest thing on our tip of our tongue, but we do a bunch of other things. We do parking equipment and access control system, hardware and software systems, EV charging. We do LPR systems, camera tracking, really sophisticated AI-based cameras to monitor parking lots and garages, the ins and outs, the occupancy. We have all these digital programs, creating a cashless environment in a digitized environment and just about any parking transaction still remains a very important goal for most people that own parking assets today. And so we've got solutions for all those folks. And so, there's kind of enforcement systems. If you own parking lots or your municipality, we've got in systems that allow for enforcement to occur and, write tickets, things like that, to make sure that you get your payments in. So there's a lot of different things we're trying to solve. I think for us, it's the fact that, we have all these different solutions on a truck. We literally have just about any type of solution. For us, it's always the interesting thing is trying to find the right combination for that particular client versus that client. This client might not care about EV, but they need parking equipment, if they need some LPR cameras. This one may not care about anything but EV charging. This one may only just need digital systems and an app that they want to digitize their parking with. So trying to find those solutions, customize them for clients, it's the fun part, but it's the challenging part because it all has to talk to one another.
Got it. So would you agree that mostly one of your biggest challenges is sort of like the integration between all these different solutions, or?
Yeah, I think I think a lot of folks in the technology space are dealing with the challenge of trying to make all their systems interoperable. We're pretty close to having everything fully integrated and talking to each other, and the ability for things to be managed, multiple products and services we have to be managed through a single sign-on, which means, Mr. User on the other end only has to go into one or two portals to manage several different services that they're offering. So we're on the cusp of some big things. We're on the cusp of some big things.
Got it. Thank you, Todd. So moving along, in regards to innovation in future, where do you see Flash and Arrive Mobility in the next 3 years, especially sort of in the market that you guys sort of concentrate?
Yeah, look, I think given the breadth and depth of our space, I think we have a lot of ground to cover in terms of rolling out. And growth is obviously our number one goal, but we're truly trying. This sounds like a cliche. Everybody is going to say they're trying to solve a problem. We are truly trying to solve a problem. Yes, there's profit attached to solving the problem, but it's the problem of connecting all these disparate systems, all these different systems. You have automakers over here and fleets over here, all kinds of different parking lots and parking garages, all types of different ownership groups with all kinds of different agendas and operating systems and data systems that need to talk to one another. It's just so complex. We're doing our best to create that connective tissue layer that kind of connects it all. And it's not easy. We've been doing it for the 8 years I've been here, and we've put a huge dent in it. We still have a lot of dents left to put. But the more solutions we've added and the more time we've had at it, we feel like we've got a pretty good head start. And that's why we find ourselves in really good company these days with companies like Apple and Google, Amazon. The automakers are coming to us first as an access point because they realize we've done a lot of the heavy lifting and hard work to give them access to that universe, which even companies with giant buckets of money like Apple and Google, when they go out and start realizing how fragmented the parking industry and the transportation industry is, how many things you have to sew together, they're like, wow, even with our buckets and buckets of money, we'd surely like to speed it up and scale faster by working with firms that have already done a lot of this.
Totally. And Todd, one of our main sort of subjects here in this podcast is the future of obviously transportation being one of them, most importantly, smart roads, autonomous vehicles, flying vehicles. What do you see the ritual effect with autonomous vehicles in the near, probably 7-10 years? Obviously, we don't have the crystal ball, but if you were to guess, within the appropriate time, what are the challenges? What do you foresee upon entering into that space?
Into the autonomous vehicle space?
Correct.
I would never profess to be an expert in autonomous vehicles, but I'll give you an opinion as somebody that's been parking cars for almost 30 years. It's for a while there in sort of the trade show circuits and in a lot of parking industry publications. Yes, there's actually parking industry publications. For those may not believe there are. For a lot of the papers that were being written, there was a lot of talk. Some people were saying it was upon us. It was imminent. We were years away from seeing major autonomous infrastructure. Other perspectives. I was literally at a parking trade show where I walked out of one room on one side of a hall at a convention center where a gentleman, both were smart, but the one gentleman was saying we're 5 years away and we have to get ready and we're woefully underprepared, and walked across the hall to another gentleman who was also intelligent, telling a story that we had 50 years before we were going to have to worry about it. And who's right? I mean, this is what experts do, right? So I think the real answer is it's somewhere in the middle. I think there's sort of not to beat a dead horse with my earlier point, but there are grand ideas, and there are a lot of small details that have to be sized up in order to bring that plane in for a landing and really make it, a common way of traveling. So I think things like electrification, things like digitization. A lot of those things are definitely the beginnings of that ecosystem, but there's a lot of work to be done before we see a ton of autonomous vehicles on the road. Be wrong. You're probably more of a autonomous vehicle expert than I am, being in the transportation.
Totally. No, that's very well said. But then, how do you think, Todd, that once we sort of enter into that electrification and autonomous vehicles, what will be the impact for parking management companies, for operators, or for technology companies like yourself that are developing all these different solutions for these parking management companies?
Yeah, I think I'll start with your parking operator size. I think parking operators have got a real challenge in front of them in terms of modernizing and adapting to a world that's going to be, constantly changing and changing faster. Kind of that Moore's law is starting to catch up with them. Change is happening, and it's happening faster every day that it goes. So there's a lot of adaptation that's got to happen really quick. And again, I'm as a lifelong parking operator, I say this with love in my heart. I see a lot of my friends and still in that industry that are way, way behind. And I think that's going to be painful. For us, it's manna from heaven. When you say a car has to be able to get into a garage without any human interaction, that's exactly the world we're trying to build. So it's going to super accelerate the need for all of our software, hardware, and technology that we're trying to roll out fast. So we see it as a pull through. The more that stuff gets out there, the more the market's going to pull us through to the promised land that we all want to get to, which is success, right? And things like our AI systems and our flash vision systems, those are going to start to help accentuate pulling data into that infrastructure to help more data being processed to make the right judgments. It's interesting, I learn a lot about the vision part of our business, and there's a product called Flash Vision. Watching what this AI can do is pretty amazing. And I'm certainly not a software engineer and an AI expert, but watching what this can do, and knowing that the automakers have systems that are even more advanced than that, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to see what's.
Totally. Well said, Todd. And then moving along with sort of electrical vehicles and sustainability, what are you mainly excited about, especially in the sort of, again, you mentioned about the charges. Any other components from sustainability in electrical vehicles that you would like to emphasize?
I think we're all trying to be more sustainable. We're all doing it for different reasons. What's driving us is obviously, no pun intended, is getting as much of that infrastructure built in place as we can. Certainly an added benefit is creating a sustainable world where we can all enjoy the planet a little bit longer and keep it cleaner, reduce carbon emissions, reduce carbon footprints, and do all that. I think any firm that's taking any steps to add to that is doing a service to their community and to their customers. So yes, we're very committed to that. It's a very convenient side effect of other reasons to do that, which is obviously where we think the world's headed with trucking and driving as it relates to EV.
Totally. That very well said. So, Todd, moving along, what is the best business advice you ever gotten, or just the best advice that you have gotten in general, whether it's personally, professionally, emotionally, you name it?
Now, can I answer twice?
Sure.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, which I actually wasn't something someone said to me. It's just something I figured out is never burn any bridges, right? When every relationship you make is precious. When you meet someone, you may think that they're a complete waste of your time to talk about, and they end up being one of your best friends or one of the most valued clients you've ever had. So, I've learned lessons in the past. Value every relationship, and hopefully they'll value you. I also say, keep an open mind. I'll just use an example of one of many of it. When I first left the parking operations and transportation management world about 8 years ago, you get to be in your 40s and you've been doing something for a couple decades. You think you're pretty smart, and then you join a technology company and you're surrounded by a bunch of 25-year-olds that speak in zeros and ones, and you feel really inferior when you see the things they're building and the ideas they have that are so far advanced what you thought was the way the world was structured. So never disvalue a relationship. Everyone has value, and be kind to everyone, and keep an open mind, and always be learning.
Totally. So Todd, you brought some really good nuggets there, because I mean, honestly, there was about 5 years ago, I want to say that I met a leader, you know, and I always treat everybody the same. And when I met him, you know, he didn't strike me as a CEO, C-level executive, but again, I just treat him with very courteous, with the same sort of respect that I treat everyone that I come across. And that particular fellow ended up awarding us with $1 million contract within 30 days. And it was all from a place of just being genuine and transparent and being present. And it was just so random that it happened. So
one of the hardest things, when you're a CEO of a company, it's one of the hardest things to make, you know, your day's probably sliced into very tiny slices with all the things you have to do, but you never know which one of those slices is going to be the most valuable. And and often the one you think is least valuable is the most valuable to you.
100%. And the other thing too, that one of my mentors always teaches me is we've been conditioned to think outside of the box, right? So we always been worried, okay, let's think about what's outside of the box. But picture that, what if there wasn't a box, right? We're already been conditioned that there's a box, but in reality, what if there wasn't a box? Imagine where creativity will take us and bring us to.
Like the world literally has you and I in a box right here on this screen right now.
Yep.
Imagine there's no box. That's a great.
So, yeah, totally. And then to conclude the episode, what is the best business book that you recommend?
So this one's probably selfish. It's called The Platform Revolution. Actually, I can't see the author's name. It's right there on my shelf. It's called The Platform Revolution. If you Google it, you can find it. It's a little bit of a selfish business book, but everything I've talked to you about today is really about my passion and Flash's passion, my career passion that I didn't even know I had until 8 years ago, which is creating this platform that's going to serve the transportation and mobility ecosystem. But there's lots of ways that you build platforms to serve lots of different things. And The Platform Revolution was a book I read about 10 years ago that really kind of opened my eyes to that world. And it's an interesting, fun read. And I think that no matter what business you're in, whether you're in shuttles and transportation, whether you're in parking, whether you're in shoe sales,
correct,
you'll find something in there that's interesting, and an interesting way to look at the way the world works now versus maybe the way it worked in the 80s.
100%. There we go, fellas. This is Todd Tucker, Senior Vice President of Flash and Ride Mobility. Todd, how can we, for all the listeners that would like to get in touch with you, how can they how can they contact you and stay in touch?
Yeah, sure. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to accept friend requests and create new networks, and you can email me there. You can also reach me at ttucker@arrive.com, and I'll be happy to respond, and we can chat.
Perfect. And we will make sure to add those notes into the episode. Again, for all the listeners, thank you for listening to today's show. And please make sure you like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode. Todd, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show tonight.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Thanks, everybody.